So, Terence, if we think about this part of the market, which is very dynamic and complex to some of the Maroon's points that he sort of outlined there, and so we think from an investment perspective, you need to have some kind of framework, and you've along with the team developed a broader AI framework in terms of how we look at these companies in this part of the market. Can you take us through some of those key elements of that framework and some of the thinking in the development?
Sure. So technology is really a lot about looking forward, but you actually learn a lot looking at the past. So history doesn't always repeat, but it does rhyme. Uh, every 10 to 20 years, you see a big technology shift or an era change. And we've seen it in the mainframe era, the 50s, 60s, the PC era, and then we moved to the mobile era, the cloud era, and now probably very early innings in the Gen AI era. The commonality for companies that participate in these technology shifts throughout these eras, you can roughly group them into one of three buckets. The first bucket is the enablers. These are the pick and shovel plays. They provide the hardware, the infrastructure that's required for the entire technology to run on. In the middle, you have the networks, the companies that diffuse and cascade these technologies to the masses and improve the adoption of that particular technology. And finally, you have the innovators. These are your creative geniuses that think of use cases and applications for each technology era. So in the current AI era, the enablers are quite obvious, as James has alluded. These are your mega tech companies like your NVIDIA, Broadcom, maybe TSMC, that are perceived winners of this Gen AI era in the early innings. What is less clear is the networks and the innovators. Um, if history is any guide, the winners of the past eras are not guaranteed a spot in the next generation of the next technology era. And that's where it gets really exciting for stock pickers to look for opportunities in those space. And in slide two, if you look at how the value is extracted throughout each era, there is a timing to it. In the early innings, the enablers are the ones that extract the most value because think of it as laying down the train tracks, the railway tracks. You have to lay the infrastructure down before the town and the economy is built around the train tracks. And so these are the ones that outperform the market early on. And we're probably seeing it right now with NVIDIA and AMD and TSMC. But as the technology progresses, the networks will start to extract more value and gain more of that bargaining power because you need them to diffuse the technology to the masses, to enterprises, and to consumers. And finally, you need the innovators to be able to really make the most profit, such that it can feed the money or the value down the chain to the networks and the enablers. You need each level and each layer of these of the stack to be profitable for the entire era and the generation of technology to work. So that's the high level framework on how we view this.
And if you take that framework that you sort of described, this concept of enablers, networks, and innovators, and there are, I guess, a range of sub themes that sit underneath those three broad categories. Can you give some color to some of those sub themes, potentially maybe the enabler category?
Yeah. Um, so for the enablers right now, it's all about compute, right? AI isn't new. It's been around for a long time. But the reason it's become impressive is because they threw more compute at the problem. And so compute is driven a lot in the headlines by NVIDIA because they're able to produce the most powerful and performant GPUs, graphic processing units out there. And these are extremely costly, like Maroon said. They cost $40,000, $50,000 a chip. In technology, the game is always about bringing down the cost, because when you get cost down, adoption goes up. And as these chips get more and more expensive, the cost of doing business is getting higher. And that kind of stands in the way of AI being more widely adopted. So one of the themes that's come up is the theme around advanced packaging. Packaging historically has been a very low margin, labor intensive business. It's the lowest margin business across the semiconductor ecosystem. But because Moore's law is slowing, Moore's law has been the tailwind for technology over the last 40, 50 years. Because what it means is you get twice the performance for the same cost. That's why our iPhones are 100,000 times faster than the rocket that sent Neil Armstrong to the moon. But it doesn't cost, we don't have to spend a defense budget to pay for that iPhone. And that's because of Moore's Law. But Moore's Law is slowing. Moore's Law is not as effective in bringing the cost down. It can still push performance, but the cost is not coming down. So enter advanced packaging. Advanced packaging helps you get better bang for your buck. It's another alternative, it's another method to get performance at a reasonable cost. And so there are companies that have been ignored or sectors that have been ignored that are seeing the value shift to them as we look for higher compute at a reasonable cost.
So Maroon, if you think about what Terence just sort of described there, there's a lot of moving parts, and being a portfolio manager, you're trying to sort of distill a lot of information. So how are you leveraging this AI framework that we use at Fidelity in terms of identifying those sort of opportunities, and maybe touch on some examples?
Yeah, so Terence made some wonderful points there. I think the first is that sequential nature of the timing, where it's the enablers followed, by the networks, followed by the innovators. And so right now, because we are in the early innings of the broader adoption of AI, the enablers, they're having sort of their moment. So there's a couple of companies in our portfolio right now that sort of play into that space. And so Terence mentioned advanced packaging. One of those companies that we own is called BE Semiconductor, which has it involves a technique called hybrid bonding. Used to be quite costly to do, but now, as Terence mentioned, with Moore's law slowing down, that's becoming a cost-effective solution, and so we're seeing increased adoption of that. So BE Semiconductor, European name, plays right into that enabler space.